All right, let's talk about this. How much we spent in Afghanistan, how much we spend on these endless wars. We have a couple of interesting reports out this morning. I mean, I'd say interesting. They are painful, jaw-dropping, and eye-opening. You want to throw in anything else? I mean, I think of any other sort of ways to describe how painful it is to see how much we've lost in human life and in money on these endless wars on terrorism. Before we get to like the broader report on the war on terrorism, let's just specifically here talk about Afghanistan for a moment. Of course, the war in Afghanistan officially over, technically, and we'll see if it actually remains over. And we don't actually conflict. Yes, conflict. The Afghanistan conflict is officially over. But the reality in all of this is quite different. It's not so hard to understand. The United States spent $2.26 trillion in Afghanistan. That's the number. Rounded up, might as well. They do. $2.3 trillion in Afghanistan. Spending that kind of money in any country should have lifted most people out of poverty, right? But the vast bulk of those funds, about $1.5 trillion, we now know, went to absurd, stratospheric military spending to maintain the U.S. military occupation. We dropped over 80,000 bombs and missiles on Afghans. Jeez. We paid private contractors, transport troops, weapons and military equipment back and forth around the world for 20 years. And since the United States fought this war with borrowed money, it also cost $500 billion in interest payments alone. Welcome into Bank of America. You'd like to apply for a loan? Well, yes. So, what do you plan to use the money for? I'm going to start a war. Okay, great. Well, there's a lot of interest in that. So you're going to be paying a lot of interest for this loan that you're going to be carrying out for war. Okay, that's fine. No problem. Medical and disability costs for U.S. soldiers that are wounded in Afghanistan already amount to over $175 billion and ongoing for the rest of their lives. Jeez. And they will likewise keep mounting as these soldiers age, of course, right? Medical disability costs for the U.S. wars in Iraq and Afghanistan could eventually top $1 trillion just on the medical needs for these soldiers. By the way, Trump released a statement yesterday saying that we should reinvade Afghanistan. He thinks it was horrible that we got out. We should go back in and reinvade Afghanistan. Sounds like a smart idea, doesn't it?
This sounds brilliant.
Take a look at the breakdown of this. It's a little hard to see on your screen, but this is the infographic I've got here for you to use here, if you don't mind. But, I mean, look at the amount of Humvees, right? The Taliban now has at their disposal, because we left this stuff, 22,000 Humvees. Look at these tanks. 42,000 pickup trucks. Can you imagine? 42,000 pickup trucks? How many radios? 162,000 radios, so they can communicate easily. Look at the amount of machine guns they've got. 358,000. How about aircraft?
I mean, okay. Think about this. Who profits the most from war?
I mean,
the war contractors, right?
The defense contractors.
People who build that stuff.
Right.
So isn't it perfect that they leave all that stuff and now, oh no, we lost all that stuff. Now we got to send more over there to get it back. Now they've got brand new contracts to provide more stuff to go get the old stuff that was already probably aging and everything like that. They're probably like, how can we make this so that we can get more money and more contracts? Oh, I know. Let's just leave the stuff. Let the Taliban have it. Then we can get the American people behind it, because it's like, hey, they stole our stuff and now they're going to use our stuff against us because this stuff's going to allow them to get over here and attack us on our own soil. So now we've got to go back and we need all new stuff and more contracts and more rebuilding. So this is just like a circle. This just seems like they did this on purpose to me.
Like an endless cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Trump thinks that's why we should go back. We should go back right now. Mitt Romney also thinks that we shouldn't leave. Mitt Romney thinks that we should stay and go back, but not everyone is on board with staying there. In fact, Lucas Coons, who's an Afghan Marine veteran, he's sick and tired of all of these warmongers. He's an Afghan Marine veteran. Okay, he watched his friends carried out on stretchers. Who knows better than these guys what this pain and suffering looks like? right? So he is sick and tired of people like Donald Trump, Mitt Romney, saying that we got out too prematurely. We need to go back in. By the way, Mitt Romney, doesn't he have 4 kids? None of them served in Afghanistan, right? Do you think that any of Mitt Romney's kids served in Afghanistan? Millionaire
or
Mitt
anywhere
Romney?
for that matter?
Yeah, or anywhere. So here's Lance Kuntz.
They might have served in the Mormon church. I'll say that.
Here's Lucas Kuntz. I love this take. I mean, just listen to him fired up.
All these people are playing the blame game right now over what's happening right now because they want to distract us from the fact that we spent 20 years, $2.3 trillion, and 2,500 U.S. service member lives over there for absolutely nothing. Like the same people right now who are saying, one more day, one more month, one more dollar, are the same people who said that for 20 years. And what we saw last week, that what that means is one more Marine. It means one more Marine over and over again. It reminds me of the saddest day of my entire life, which was standing on the flight line in Helmand, Afghanistan, in the middle of the night, watching the fallen body of one of the members of my battalion loaded onto a transport plane to go home. These people are trying to keep us focused on what's happening right now because they have been telling the American people that it was worthwhile to spend $2.3 trillion over there for absolutely nothing, while they've been refusing to spend that much building up our own country here at home, and we can't let them win. We have to fight back against that narrative because it's wrong, and it's just part of the systematic institutional dishonesty that has us in this position right now.
Well said. And rare to see that kind of stuff on MSNBC. You know, they're like, get this guy off the air. Like, we got to get back into war. We got to get back in there. So what about rebuilding Afghanistan? Well, Congress appropriated $144 billion for the reconstruction in Afghanistan since 2001. But only $88 billion of that was spent to recruit, arm, train, and pay Afghan security forces that have now disintegrated. Let me repeat that. $88 billion of that wasn't spent on schools, bridges, roads, infrastructure, or anything like that. Power, water supply, wells for what? Nothing. Overwhelmingly, it was for those, it was for training security forces, to recruit them, to arm them. So when we say this is to rebuild, what are we spending it on? We're spending it on this crap. That's how you rebuild, right? That's how you rebuild. And that's how you can justify it in a war budget. And all these security forces that have now disintegrated with soldiers returning to their villages or joining up with the Taliban. Another $15 billion we spent between 2008 and 2017. That was documented as, quote, waste, fraud, and abuse. Let me just tell you something. If you ran a business where you spent $15 billion over 10 years was like basically pissed away in the wind on fraud, waste, and abuse. That was by the U.S. Special Inspector General for Afghanistan, said it was just like wasted. I mean, I've had viewers who've written to me. You've sent me, and I'm not going to name names. I had a soldier who sent me photos where they were literally handing out just bags of cash. Just bags of cash was left there. Just bags of cash all throughout Afghanistan. That's it. That's what we do. The crumbs left over, by the way, less than 2% of total U.S. spending on Afghanistan amounts to $40 billion. $40 billion out of $2.3 trillion should have gone to help benefit the Afghan people in economic development, in healthcare, and education, and infrastructure, and humanitarian aid.
Or better yet, it could have went to the United States for those things.
Right.
I mean, what did we just figure yesterday? $17 billion would pay everybody's rent that's behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine if the United States had that kind of those. We don't need all those tanks in the United States. We don't need all of this other. We don't need weapons and all these other things. Imagine if we took that $2.3 trillion and reinvested it in the United States. Now, we have a Social Security story coming up in just a few minutes here on the show, and how that's running dry. Can't afford that. We can certainly afford this, though. The number of U.S. service members to die during the war right now sits at 2,400, roughly 2,400. 2,400 Americans died. I'll get to the Afghans in a moment. More than 20,000 Americans were wounded during that time. So wounded, that will cost up to $1 trillion to take care of medical services and rehabilitation and physical therapy for the rest of their lives. $1 trillion in costs. America, and the 20,000 people that were wounded during this time. That's according to the Defense Department. These aren't like made up numbers. These are from the Defense Department, which are probably even watered down numbers, wouldn't you say?
Most likely, because they don't want us to know the actual costs.
Exactly. Another 1,144 other Allied troops were killed in action. So that's not just the United States. I mean, Canada, UK, other places. At least, and here are the Afghan numbers. At least 66,000 Afghan troops were killed.
Well, and I want people to understand that when they take those numbers, they take into consideration any child that they consider military age, which could be 12 or 13 years old, and those are considered militants or of that age, so soldier age. So those are counted in that 66,000. So understand that it's not just soldiers in those numbers, even though they'll try to tell you that's what it is.
So an 8-year-old son of somebody is considered a soldier, I guess.
Yeah.
We heard that during the Bush years, right? They're training 5-year-olds. 48,000 Afghan civilians were killed. So 60,000 Afghan troops, 48, might as well run it up to 50,000 because these are probably underreported numbers. 50,000 Afghan civilians were killed, said the U.S. Inspector General for Afghanistan. And roughly 75,000 Afghans have been injured since the war in 2001. So 60,000 soldiers, 48,000 civilians were killed, and then another 75,000 Afghans have been injured somehow during the war since 2001. And now this stunning new report out this morning on just how bad the war on terror has been. This is from the PSR, Physicians for Social Responsibility. Casualty figures after 10 years of the war on terror. Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan. This out today. Unbelievable. If we go through it and reading through this, I mean, it's 100 pages, and we're not going to, who did the killing, the criticism of scientists, from scientists on some of the government numbers. Really remarkable and really troubling. And the Intercept did a really good job breaking this down. And I'll kind of go through some of the numbers on this. The costs of war projects, latest estimates hold that 897,000 to 929,000 people have been killed during these wars. Basically 1 million people. 1 million people. Of those killed, 387,000 are categorized as civilians. I mean,
and we know it's way more than that. We know it is.
I mean, James Figueroa says that, I'm going to show that because it was hidden by YouTube, James, but he gave the middle finger. This is for our idiots in government. Do your job and get out, James says in our chat. Yeah.
And they say like we're fighting terrorism. With those numbers killing 1 million people in their country, we're not fighting terrorism. We're creating it. We are creating people who want to kill us. That's why they want to do us harm. It's not because we're free. There are way freer countries than the United States. Why aren't they messing with them? Why is nobody bombing Canada or threatening Uruguay or Paraguay or Portugal or anything like that? They're more free than we are here.
They learned their lessons. Who was one of the biggest imperialists in the world? Portugal. Right? I mean, they set the standard for the slave trade. Portugal, the Portuguese did, right? I mean, they were the leaders. They were brutal, absolutely brutal. Read your history on Portugal. Guess what? They learned their lesson. So you want to make America? We're going to be a force for good. We're going to be the greatest country in the world. Portugal and these other countries are like, yeah, been there 400 years ago. Didn't work out so well. We hurt a lot of people. So we're not going to do that anymore. You guys want to do this? You're a young country, America. This is how you want to be. You want to be a force for good? Here's your force for good. 2 decades, U.S.'s global war on terror has taken 1 million lives and costs $8 trillion. $8 trillion. Wrap your head around that. Wrap your head around that as someone just in our chat here, I think Belinda says, but we are left with no pot to piss in here in the United States. Yeah.
We
Exactly.
can't get a freaking stimulus, the $2,000 stimulus check our president promised us from the very beginning. We can't get that. We've got homelessness. We've got the government saying we're going to help 50% of the impoverished children, not 100%, but we can send all of this money, $2 trillion over there. We can send $5 trillion to our crony buddies in the in their corporations, but we can't help these little people, these peons, these peasants.
Mm-hmm. No, we can't do that. We can't do that at all. And when you look at this stunning report, it looked at the tolls not only in wars raging in Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Somalia. I mean, you can't even count them all. Like, if I had to ask you, like, where are we at war? Many of you wouldn't even be able to answer that question. No offense to you, but we don't even know. It's kept from the American people where we are in action.
Well, and again, can we really call these wars? Because we're not actually at war. We're just over there. We are just occupying. That's all we're doing. We're going over there. We're bombing. We're occupying. We are not at war. War's never been declared. We're not in danger by any of these people at all. Our soil is not in danger, but they will tell you it is over and over again.
Middle East, Central Asia, Africa. We're in all, and they're referred to as forever wars. So will President Biden have the balls, now that he's had the balls to get us out of Afghanistan, as messy as it was, as ugly as it was, to get us out of these other places? Maybe he was, the conspiracy theorists, I'll say this, I know he's part of the military industrial complex idea, right? All of these guys are, all these politicians are. They want to make sure that Boeing and Raytheon and all these defense contractors are well taken care of and paid for. So I don't want to say that President Biden is doing the right thing here. I'm going to say, but I have an idea. Maybe he is.
Come on, man.
I'm trying to give you a little credit here, Joe. I'm saying maybe, just maybe you were like, you know what? I'm going to trick everybody. I'm going to get in there like a Trojan horse. I'm going to pay lip service to everything will remain the same. I'm going to pay lip service that nothing fundamentally will change. I'm going to pay lip service that we need to have a strong military and make sure that we're, beefing up our defense budget. And then I'm going to get in there and I'm going to pull us out of all of these wars. And you know what? I'm 82 years old, and guess what? I'll be gone soon enough and I'll fall on the sword. Wouldn't that be great? What if he was he ended up becoming like a martyr? I know. I'm going way too far here. But I'm just saying, couldn't we, it's like a John Lennon song. Imagine if that were the case. Imagine if we find out he's like, I got elected, and I'm ending all of these wars. Screw you to the military industrial complex. Wouldn't it be funny?
It would be. But, it's funny because people get so up in arms when anybody talks about white supremacy. They're like, white supremacy is bad. White supremacy is bad. But they don't say a word about American supremacy, because that's what this is. People that get behind this and people are like, we've got to be doing this. We've got to be doing this. We're the best country in the world. Wave that flag. Be proud of that flag. That's American supremacy. So what is really the difference?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, exactly. We're going to be a force for good. The Toby Keith song, we're going to put a boot up your ass. Like, what? Why are we putting a boot up why are we killing 374,000 innocent people that have nothing? I don't know if you saw the images this morning. I hope, don't look at it if you don't, I mean, I didn't want to put it on the show, but that family that was brutally murdered the other day by American drone strike, 8 out of the 10 people in those cars were children. This little girl, I'm just looking at this little girl who was just slightly younger than my daughter, who's 5 years old in a week. This little happy girl. What do we do? We just blew her up in a car. For what? And if this doesn't rub you the wrong way, then your head's not turned on. It's not screwed on right. But we can spend all of this money. We can do all of this, and yet we can't even take care of our own people. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.